event for this year. And we have three wonderful speakers with us, architects Heather McKinney at AIA and Godfrey, AIA, along with Austin Parks and Recreation Department Assistant Director, Dr. Liana Kallivoka. Kallivoka. Maybe I said it right. This also serves as our annual meeting, where the only order of business today is for AIA Austin members to vote on the slate of candidates for the AIA Austin 2022 Board of Directors. So before we get started, I'd like to express gratitude to our Design Talk sponsors for 2021. As I call your name, if you're here, could you please stand and introduce yourselves? So I'll start with Steve Morris from Acme Brick. And from Rogers O'Brien, do we have Laurel Deckis? Thank you, Laurel. And Sarah Scott and JT Lanier from Dovetail Made. And from Structura, do we have Marie Franke? Nope. And also thank you to Den Properties. Brian Katie couldn't be with us today. Thank you so much to all of our sponsors. I hope all of our sponsors will sign up to support us again next year. As I reflect back on 2021 as president of AIA Austin, I remember what Eric Rouser told me as he was outgoing last year, which was this year would be even more challenging than 2020 because the shock of the pandemic will have worn off, and navigating the leadership of AIA Austin and not really knowing what's coming down the pipe will be even harder, and maybe the grace afforded to everyone in 2020 will have been waning. Well, Eric, you were wrong. I don't mind saying all of our members and staff and committee chairs, everyone has been, our sponsors, incredibly gracious this year. Even if the decisions that leadership made at AIA Austin were a little different than what you might have done, your support has not wavered, and for that I am so very grateful. We are well positioned for 2022, and I'm really excited and looking forward to that. My only true disappointment is that we didn't get more opportunities like this to be together. So I really hope you'll make the most of what's remaining of this year and help us celebrate AIA Austin and AFA with the Form Function event and the holiday party, and so I can see you in person then. Okay, so at this time, as chair of this meeting, I would entertain a motion to open the 2021 AIA Austin annual business meeting.
So moved.
Okay, Ricardo removed, and I think I saw Eric second. So we will get started. And just as a reminder, only Institute members, that's AIA, associate members, and emeritus members, are qualified to make nominations or to vote. And the only issue on the agenda today is the election of our 2022 officers and commissioners. So I'd like to introduce Camille Jobe, AIA, President-elect and Chair of the 2021 Nominating Committee.
Madam President, all the nominees are qualified and have agreed to serve the AIA Austin and its members. And that concludes the report from our nominating committee.
Thank you, Camille. No. All right, so at this time, are there any nominations from the floor? I guess all of you can be seated now. And I'll ask one more time, any nominations from the floor for any of these positions? Okay, hearing none, as this motion comes from a committee, no second is required. Will all of those in favor of the slate as presented, please say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Great, congratulations, Camille. Your Board of Directors for 2022. I think I speak for all of us when I say we stand ready to support and serve. So at this time, as chair of this meeting, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the 2021 annual business meeting. Okay, Philip, move. Do I have a second?
Second.
Eric, second. Okay. And I don't know if we have to actually vote on that. All in favor of adjourning? Okay, great, thanks. So now to our special program for today. Being back in person is really special, and it's relevant to the speakers. that will discuss their community recreation centers and the importance of these physical gathering spaces, spaces for people to come together and share ideas and experiences. As some of you know, AIA Austin and the Austin Foundation for Architecture are aspiring to have a true center for architecture and design, a place where conversations like this one will happen, as well as exhibits, family activities, films, events, dialogues with our city leaders, and so much more. We believe that places to gather to encourage the exchange of ideas are crucial for our cities and communities and neighborhoods all to thrive. So now for our esteemed speakers. I will start by introducing Al Godfrey, AIA. He is principal for Limbacher and Godfrey Architects, a firm he co-founded in 1995. During his 40 years in the Central Texas design community, Al has designed and had built institutional, residential, and urban projects throughout the region. His work has won numerous design awards and has been published extensively. Al's leadership and vision were crucial factors in successfully delivering the City of Austin's award-winning boardwalk on Lady Bird Lake project for construction. This $28 million, 1.4-mile trail and bridge addition is the most ambitious public project ever undertaken for Austin's most public natural area. Al is also a leading advocate for public-private partnerships in the public realm. In his role as board member of the Trail Foundation, Al is leading urban planning efforts specific to Lady Bird Lake, working with the South Central Waterfront Initiative and the Seaholm Intake Structure Project, as well as the recently completed Trail Bridge at Congress Avenue. Heather McKinney, FAIA, is the founder of McKinney York Architects, which she started in Austin in 1983. A guiding force behind the firm's design voice, her ability to listen critically, understand the underlying and unspoken needs of clients, and convert those aspirations into concepts has shaped the firm's collaborative design process. In addition to her design contributions, she has devoted herself to cultivating the architectural profession through years of service on boards, commissions, juries, and panels both locally and around the country. Heather was the 2020 recipient of the Texas Society of Architects Medal for Lifetime Achievement in honor of Llewellyn W. Pitts, FAIA, in recognition of her career of distinguished design, leadership, and service. Heather firmly believes that, especially in the case of public and civic institutions, not only do we as architects have a responsibility to meet the needs of our clients, but we must also respond to the needs of the wider community. And finally, our third speaker, Liana Kallivoka, PhD, is an assistant director for the City of Austin's Parks and Recreation Department, the trusted steward of the City of Austin's public lands. Prior to this position, Liana was the manager of the commercial division at Austin Energy Green Building Program. Throughout her long career, Liana's focus has been on applying her experience and expertise in sustainable practices, smart growth, efficient projects and program delivery, and performance optimization. Liana has been extensively involved in the development of the LEED rating systems and metrics, serving as subject matter expert for the U.S. Green Building Council and leading the work of national committees. Liana is a licensed professional engineer in the state of Texas and a registered architect in the European Union. And before I turn it over to our panelists, I would like to let you know that additional forks have arrived. If you need one, please raise your hand and I'll bring it to you. So we will have time for questions for our speakers after they've given their presentations. And right now, I'll turn it over to the panelists.
Thank you, Steffi. Thank you, everybody. Isn't this great to be here? It's just phenomenal. I'm going to talk about the Dove Springs Recreation Center project we did. And to begin, I thought it would be helpful to talk about the Dove Springs community a little bit and to tell you that it's largely an Hispanic working class community. Many people who live there work 2 jobs. Many people rely on public transportation. It is a food desert. It has problems with childhood obesity, and those are some of the challenges there. It's also, within that, a robust, thriving community. It's not a place where people live and think, gosh, I need to get out of here as soon as I possibly can. There are people who have lived there for decades, raised their families, and are really proud of what they've done, and their families and their children and what they've become. And if you look at this list, a lot of this looks pretty familiar. And this is taken from our very first community engagement session with the community. So when you look at Zumba, you look at youth soccer, this all sounds pretty familiar. But what's a little less familiar is the two categories in pink, which are literally the Parks Department feeding people. We're familiar with schools feeding children in need, but less well-known is the challenge of Parks Departments feeding people, and that does happen here at Dove Springs. Now, this is what happens, and this is how Dove Springs operates when everything is going well, and how the community center, the recreation center, works for the community when everything is going well. But when all hell breaks loose and the sky is falling, the recreation center takes on a different role. And that did happen in this community 8 years ago, almost to the day. A record flood, an unprecedented flood, damaged over 600 houses, destroyed upwards of 200, and the waters rose 9 feet per hour. It was an amazing event, catastrophic, a national, a federal disaster, a declaration for this event. And the relief was centered in the Dove Springs Recreation Center. And so if you needed housing, you came here. If you needed access to computers and communications, you came here. If you didn't have any place else to go, you could live in the gymnasium, and many families did. And if you're living in the gymnasium, you need a resolution to what to do with your pets, because they can't live with you. You need somebody to help you house your pets. So all that happens under times of duress in this recreation center. So this is 2013, Halloween night. We were brought on board a few months later. I don't think they're related that we were brought on board. But anyway, we were brought on board, and we began with a public engagement process that included 3 in-person touches with the community, 3 community meetings. And the first was a project kickoff to explain to the community what the project was, what the community center already offered, where the money came from, what the schedule would be like, what the community should expect, and it included a first round of community input. What would you like? Tell us what's on your mind, and that kind of a session. Following that, the Parks Department undertook a deep survey process, trying to catch lots of people in the community. It was online, it was in paper. There were posted boards around the communities where people could contribute comments, and that resulted in a clear aspiration from the community that this renovation focus on healthy eating and increased access to movement and activity. And that, as architects, we translated that into to be multi-purpose space. So that could be yoga, Zumba, kickboxing, dance, and the like. So that was meeting number 1. And after meeting number 1, we went to the community. Meeting number 2, asked them, help us prioritize. You've told us what your general thought is. Help us prioritize. Help us understand your how you would wish us to deploy our budget. We want to be really clear with them that we didn't have unlimited funds, and that's me channeling the Parks Department. The Parks Department was saying that. And how should we do that? So we started by giving them a little high-level tutorial on how their particular recreation center was organized. We gave them a high-level tutorial on what's in it and how the spaces are categorized. And with these color codings, that set them up and gave them a frame of reference for being able to make decisions on what would be new. So we gave them a menu of options, also color-coded, to say, help us figure out about 3,500 square feet of stuff that would be your top priority. And they did. And in a large cafetorium in an elementary school nearby, the group was divided into about 14 tables, and each table did something like this. So they chose, and then furthermore, they did a worksheet to kind of check their work and be sure that they were all on track. And this is in the service of hearing the community, but also making sure that the feedback we get from the community is realistic and based in the constraints of the project. And then meeting 3, we went back and said, this is what we think we've heard. Did we get it right? And they said, yes, we're in a room, and a lot of nodding heads going like this. And we said, okay, then here are some ways we could do that. And we then showed them some diagrams. You can see this is scheme 3. And what do you respond to, and at the site level and at the plan level. And that then left us with this, which is the existing building itself. Now our task, we know how to remodel a building, but how do you add on to a building like this that is tightly constrained by paving that we didn't want to touch, and further, all the edge conditions are occupied space, so if you glue something onto the side of it, you need to invade what's currently an occupied space, so you lose the value of that. It got really complicated. And then also, what about that green roof? So we chose to do something different. We chose to not add on to the building at all. We chose to build adjacent to the building like this. And in this way, we didn't touch the green roof. We didn't destroy any of the existing fabric that had a lot of usable service life left in it, windows, bricks, and the like. And by doing this and creating this outdoor space here, covered outdoor space, we were able to give a new kind of definition for the spaces in the existing building that confront that in terms of, from the standpoint of, now they had a kind of indoor-outdoor life, where before it was indoor, conditioned, fine, feels good, outdoor, really stark and difficult. And so that's the diagram of the covered outdoor space, breezy, natural light, shaded, view to the park. And there it is. And you can see our building sitting next to the existing building. And there's diversity in the architecture, I think, where they went with stripes, we went with shiny. They can have their green roof. We chose to not. But we live comfortably next to one another. Each is respecting the other. And again, we're living next to that existing building without having touched it from an addition standpoint. What is this? I can't see that. There's an aerial view. And that's the park, and of course, it's looking that way out into the body of the park. That's the interior of the new space. And here's the plan that all the green we touched and remodeled, and the pink is the new. And it even included a new, much needed commercial kitchen to feed all those good people. And a few words about the central spaces and our interventions there, particularly with respect to the fluid shapes of the new furniture. And here is a small shelf for information. and that is in a location that did have vending machines. So we replaced sugar-based liquids with presumably health-inspiring literature. A new control station, but mostly this study, which was a TV room, and we opened it up so that the commerce of this, the social commerce of this, joined with the social commerce of the larger set of spaces. And the fluid shape of the desk is intentional in that it is non-hierarchical. There's no head of the table or anything else. And it, I think, is intended anyway, to allow for various social configurations with respect to collaboration. So if you're working on a group project, you can mutually sit around here. If you're thinking, well, somebody creepy sitting over here, but I still want to see it, you could sit over here, and anywhere in between. And so that table is intended to do that, and it looks like that. So, and then we added the window as well. Curiously, the existing building had very little in the way of windows, and crime is a problem in this park, and windows on the park is a really good idea, so we added that. This is one of them. Here's our control. That's purple. And I wanted to end by talking about this scupper, which serves as a breeding feature for the project and is scaled to that. But it's also very practical in that it moves the water well away from the building in a circumstance where the soils are the worst I've ever encountered. So that's good. But we thought it appropriate to greet people with such a gesture, particularly against the backdrop that water has played such a burnishing role in the life of this community, and the idea that we would offer a gesture that interpreted that phenomenon seemed appropriate to us, and the fact that it would be rather large and rather expressive seemed apropos. And with that, I believe I'm going to give the floor to my colleague and friend, Heather.
Let me see if I can. Oh, yeah, I can. All right. So our project that we're going to show you today, we're really mostly going to talk, I'm mostly going to talk about our community engagement with this project, because our firm's been doing a lot of work in East Austin for a long time. We office there, and although none of us, well, some of us are first speakers in Spanish, and some of us live in East Austin, it's not really the community that we grew up in. So we are always looking for ways to learn how better we can provide services and places that are welcoming, that people belong to, and that are inspiring and create joy. So we started tracking this project when the bond election was passed in 2012. We started shadowing, we started going to community meetings just to hear what that community was talking about. They were amazing advocates for what they wanted. The bond election actually had two components. There was a new community rec center, and there was also a health program for wellness. And so those two programs combined, and we were able to have the new building that was being offered to this community was going to have two pieces to it, which was pretty exciting. this is what they had, which was basically for a long time an air-conditioned, looked like airport hangar, and many wonderful things happened there. Many things, just like Al talked about, community Thanksgivings. It's just everything from little toddlers up to people in wheelchairs in their last years of life. Everybody came there, and it was a really important, it was a community center, but it didn't have enough space for the things that they needed to do and the programs that they really wanted to have. And so, long overdue, they got this opportunity to actually have a brand new building on the same site. So they have already a pool, which is now going to go into its new life, and a ballpark, and they had some outdoor recreation playground. So we started off just as same 3 sets of outreach programs. We worked with, why am I missing this? Cultural strategies, I always want to say community strategies, on community outreach presentations. Also, hand in hand with Parks and Recreation Department and the Health Department. They all provided manpower and visuals and bilingual speakers, so that we were able to communicate with everybody that attended. And these sessions were highly attended. So what we started off with was to ask them about adjectives. Like, if you could describe in a word what you want to have this place be, knowing that the place that they had, which was woefully inadequate, was also much beloved. What are the things that you want? What do you aspire to? And so we had many, many words on here. And the words they picked, along with we had these posters, and we made images so that people could say, oh, that's what you meant when you meant, ostentatious. And so the words that they picked are these, which are balanced, easygoing, humble, respectful, innovative, energetic, and adventurous. And so those were, not words that we were expecting. And I have to say that always happens when we do good community engagement, is that we learn things about the people that we're designing for that are unexpected. And that's what tells us, that's the key to who they are, that's different than us. And that's what we want to capture. So we did the same thing again as Al did, a little bit different graphically. They know that site really well. They arrive by foot, by bicycle, by car, by bus, and the street is vibrant, and so they knew what the potential of the site was. I mean, they knew it better than we did. And so we looked at, where are the trees, where are the playground, can we have the playground so you don't have to cross the parking lot to get to the play equipment? All those kind of things they could discuss with a pretty high level of sophistication because of their familiarity with the site. Then we took this. There was a program already provided for us, so we had felt pads and these little discs that graphically showed how big each of those spaces were. And we said, who wants, what do these spaces want to be next to each other? How, do you want to be able to see these spaces, or should they be separated? What spaces have synergy? And everybody did breakout sessions. This is our second round of stuff. We did breakout sessions, and people did the bubble diagrams and put them together, and then kind of explained to us why they felt certain things were important to be together. Again, some very surprising connections that we found. Then we took that and did this third round, similar again to what Al did. We had 4 sets of presentation boards with alternatives, options, explaining, what we heard, and we put them in 4 different places around the community. We also did a pretty broad outreach in terms of email, but this was meant to touch everybody, whether or not they had computers, phones, whatever. And so we did get feedback from this. And I think the important thing was that the way that this was structured, which again, I think very similar to your process, the idea was to make it as approachable as it could be. So somebody didn't have to stand up in a space like this, everybody, looking at them and say, well, I have this idea, it might be really bad. If you did it the way that we did it, with a lot of breakout rooms, with people flowing around between groups, and then there being voices for the ideas that came up, it emboldened people to really come out and talk about what they wanted. So this is our site plan. Rain garden was important because of drainage, but it also gave us this really great, this is the way you come from the bus. It's also a thoroughfare this direction, and the parking is behind the building. The playgrounds are over here, and the ball fields and the community pool remain where they were, but this parking now is very beneficial for the people coming just to the ball fields. Okay, so this is how our building laid out on the first floor, and as you can see, the community center offices and their uses, where they combine with the community, are over here, in the gymnasium, boxing, fitness, and other exercise spaces are on the left. This was one of the things that was very important to them. I told you they come all different ways to this site, and it was important to gather people in the same place, that no matter which way you came in the building, you were always coming in the front door. And so this is the front door. It's where everything merges. These 2 programs have their separate spaces, but they also have spaces that are shared. And we put all the spaces that were exciting action spaces, fitness spaces, and really the jewel in the crown of this facility is their boxing program. Always has been historically, and so we have boxing right there on the street, basically. And this is that main entrance. This is partly behind here is some boxing, and these shade devices are to screen from the east sun. But you can walk right along the street and see what's going on in this space. Although they didn't actually say it, this community is very colorful, and so we really wanted to see color in the facility. And as it turned out, the Art in Public Places program, which was very integral to this project, a principal artist was chosen, and he is from the community. He then turned around and chose an additional 4 artists, and I think there's 6 pieces altogether that are on the site, different media, and pretty colorful. There's our boxer. Mural. This is the running track around the gym. One of the outdoor sculpture. And then these shade panels, which are basically people in motion, symbolic people in motion. So that's kind of it for us. Oh yeah, this was actually a pretty popular little move. These are old recycled basketball court flooring that we made into the reception desk and some of the other spaces. So that was really fun. So I just want to say that this process, this community outreach, I have to admit that once upon a time, I used to just kind of go through the motions of this stuff. I used to think nobody really wants to come to this. You know, we're not getting any good information out of it. And I've sort of done a 180, and I think that's because I've learned how to do it, and I've learned how to harvest what happens in those meetings. And it's really, really clear to us as a design studio that getting the information from our users, from our partners, is really critical to the richness of the program, and especially when you're working with a community that has a culture that is not ingrained already in your own DNA. You need to go like a whole lot extra, and learning how to do that is just, it takes time, and I just I can't emphasize how much better our work is for the time that we spend up front listening and learning.
Liana, would you like?
I don't have a presentation, but probably just sharing with you a few notes from the perspective of the owner. So I was so happy to hear everything about the community engagement. And the Parks Department is the owner of the space, but we are basically the stewards, and we have a say on how we are operating, but it's the community that actually has the final word on how the space fits their needs. And every community is different. And it is successful when we have architects who listen and who take note and eventually deliver what the community needs in order to continue to enjoy that space. And I want to mention a little bit about more about how these spaces function, which is not just a gathering space for kids after school, or for families, for special events, or for athletic. A lot of times, and it happens more than we want to admit, these spaces are the critical spaces for the community when there are disasters and when we have stressors, and especially climate stressors recently. So they have served every year at least one time. Even the recent years, we had the flooding, we had the water issues, we had the winter storm Uri. And these are the spaces where they go to pick up water or to shelter if they need to. When other communities are sending people, like Houston, when they have their own disasters, these centers also serve that purpose. So it's important, and I will mention just as a starting conversation or thinking, our department now is exploring how to make those rec centers be resilient centers. How can they function when other things are not working, when they are off the grid, when water is not available? So how, or even a simple thing, can they just offer a space where someone can charge their phones? That connectivity is critical for many who want to be part of the community and be connected to their families. So that's the one part. And Heather and Al have provided a lot of information about the buildings. Community engagement can be stressful. People can have strong opinions, and it's important to engage. I love when they engage and they express what they need. Sometimes we have to bring everything together and satisfy as much as possible. It's not possible to for everybody to be 100% happy. And part of that also has to do with our budget. Our budgets are small. We are a department within a city. We get our funding from taxes. So we cannot overspend. We have to be frugal. I think the architecture of both projects actually speaks to that. And part of what I would also mention has to do with creating buildings that are sustainable for operations. So when we get the building, we cannot afford to spend crazy money on utility bills. And both of these projects actually are quite successful on that. And I know that LEED is not the answer, LEED certification is not the answer for everything, but both projects did get LEED certification on a very small budget. And Montopolis, the Recreation and Community Center, got LEED Gold. And the George Morales Dove Springs Rec Center achieved LEED Silver. And I would mention that, first of all, they would have achieved LEED Gold if the contractor was more experienced. But they also registered for LEED at the end of design, which in my view is a huge handicap, but it was a good design to begin with. So kudos to both projects. And I think with that, I'll probably give it back to Heather and Al for any questions, or to Stephanie. Thank you.
We're going to bring you a mic if you have one. Just raise your hand for any of our three panelists. Any questions?
This is for Al. Just on the Dove Springs, that feature, the water feature, is at the entry. Was there any thought given to collecting the rainwater and reusing it, or was that out of the budget? Or maybe the one
market at a we use the rain garden, and so that way we slowed it down. We didn't have the budget to really collect it and really use it for irrigation. This isn't working, right?
It's working here, though.
It is. Okay. It's my ear that is. But we used it. We had a rain garden.
No one's waiting me down, so I guess we will wrap up a little early. Thank you again, Al, Heather, Liana, for being here for your talk, and congratulations to Camille and the 2022 Board of Directors. Stay tuned to AIAAustin.org for next year's Design Talk speakers. That information will be coming soon, and we hope to see you again tomorrow evening here for the AFA Architects event, and also for Form Function on the 18th. So have a great day and see you soon. Thanks, everybody.
It was good to see you again.